And so please, the floor is yours. Please take it away.
Awesome. I'm requesting ability to share my screen. Didn't realize I didn't have that. Um, well, it's a pleasure. And thank you for that introduction. And we are delighted to be producing our first two episodes with IAU. I think I just saw Dr. Torres, who's going to be talking about galaxies, and then is it Dr. Pena or Pena? I'm forgetting if it's an Inya or not, but who will be discussing tardigrades, which is going to be our first astrobiology episode, which I can't wait for. Uh, but my a couple goals for today's session, and if there's Cynthia reminded me prior to this that not everyone here is speaks English as a principal language, and so if I go over anything that's too fast or that's not clear, let me know. Particularly as someone who speaks Spanish as a second language and who gets to ask his team to repeat things frequently, I totally understand what that's like. So my a couple goals I'd love for at the end of this for y'all to be fans of Cumbre Kids and aware of what we do. I want to make this as helpful as I can. I think this is like a group of science communicators that I see as like we're all trying to achieve very similar goals, and so I want to be as open and helpful as I possibly can. Um, and if there are a few folks that we have the opportunity to collaborate with down the line, that would be an awesome outcome. I'd love feedback on this if anybody wants to chime in. Some goals that I heard in my early conversations with Cynthia and Kelly are that y'all are bringing into the session, not for the session, but that are on National Outreach Coordinators' minds. Our growing awareness and appreciation for the field of astronomy, tools to inspire future generations looking for tools, strengthening public support for scientific research and inquiry, improving the size and impact of your outreach efforts, and potentially improving the effectiveness of working with media or other collaborators. And then maybe one to add is learning about children's specific outreach is a topic that Cynthia brought up prior to this. Anything else that's top of mind that I should be aware of as I enter this?
No, I think that covers a lot. Yes.
Okay, all right, great. Well, a couple things that we'll discuss. I'll give a background on Cumbre Kids. I'll talk about how we design and produce our STEM programs, and especially specifically in the context of the family and pre-K through 5. Talk a little bit about audience development and how we approach it, and partnerships, how we approach partnerships, and how we've managed to partner with some great organizations. Working across cultures, both across cultures on our team and our audiences and with our partners. And then thinking about science communication in 2025 and the environment that we're operating in. So we'll start out with Cumbre Kids. This is our team. Obviously me, I'm Robert. I'm the executive producer. These are my three co-founders. This is Herwin Riera. I've been producing podcasts with Herwin since 2018. He's the host of our science podcast about wildlife, Camaleón, Ciencia de Animales para Niños, and our bedtime podcast, which is called Buenas Noches, Cráneo. There's Catherine Aguilar, who is the producer of Cráneo, Ciencia para Niños Curiosos. And then there's Wilmer Angelo, who is just like he's incredible. He's a jack of all trades. He subs in to produce on both of those podcasts, as well as he works directly with our listening families. And then not pictured here, but equally important to our team are our artists, Moises Monsalve and Jorge Cedillo. And then we have two girls who are our co-hosts for one of our podcasts, Isabella Ramirez, who is 8 years old, and Hema Castro, who's 11 years old. These are our programs. I'll probably move this a little bit faster. But Cráneo, Ciencia para Niños Curiosos is our general STEM podcast. Covers everything from engineering to astronomy to human anatomy, wildlife ecology, you name it, we're probably doing it. Camaleón, Ciencia de Animales para Niños is our conservation and wildlife podcast. We'll talk mostly about these two. Two other programs that we also produce are Buenas Noches, Cráneo, which is a mindfulness podcast designed for children, and Los Negocios de Varen, which is a financial literacy podcast. As you can see, we are like, this is our entire portfolio that Cumbre Media produces. We only produce children's educational content. And really now the three active podcasts are all STEM and conservation focused. These three on the left. They're highly performing programs. They're free to listen to, free to use by teachers and parents and families. As Cynthia kindly mentioned, we're nearing 100 or 200,000 listening families, and somewhere between 2.5 and 4 million episode plays, and they're very highly reviewed. We'll get into some detail about our programs here in a moment, but I want to pause here to see if there's any questions about what we do. Nope. Okay, awesome. Jump in if so. So we produce about astronomy, but we also, speaking of design, children have very broad interests. And so we try to cater to the many directions that children have questions about the world, and adults. Although adults may not tell you that they are always like curious, they are, especially if you give them an excuse to learn. But we produce, as you can see, here's a couple examples of the fields that we produce about astronomy, paleontology, engineering, wildlife, as I mentioned, a bunch of other topics that aren't included here. And these are weekly programs. So every week we'll have a new topic, and we try to keep the topics varied, except for chameleon. Animals seem to like be an area of special interest for little ones. And so that one we've really gone deep into, also given the importance of conservation. But basically what we do is we produce these are two primary STEM podcasts, Cranio and Camaleon. This kind of gets to the designing for children. We produce podcasts they're not super complex. They are essentially interview podcasts. If the interview were led by a room full of 6-year-olds, is kind of how they feel. Dr. Torres and Cynthia have listened to our podcast, so correct me if you disagree with that characterization. But we'll work with the expert guest to choose the topic for an episode. We then go to our parents through a WhatsApp community that we maintain. We've got, I think at this point, we probably have around 1,000. Wait, we had 1,500, then we moved the community. Anyways, that's too much background, but I think we have around 1,000 parents that have voluntarily written to us asking to submit questions for episodes, and so we'll share episode topics with them. Parents will record their children, then saying, or we will go to them and say, we're producing an episode with NASA about Jupiter, or in that case, wow, drawing a blank about not Artemis. Artemis is to the moon. Anyways, the mission to Jupiter, or to the moons of Jupiter. And then parents will record their children saying, "Hi, I'm Robert. I'm 6 years old. I live in Houston, Texas. And my question is, how many moons does Jupiter have? Or what are the moons of Jupiter made of? Or what are we trying to learn by going to Jupiter? Or why does it take so long to get to Jupiter?" We'll choose 10 of those topics that we'll send to our expert guest in advance of the interview. And then we'll have a virtual interview that we then will produce as an episode. We'll combine the children's questions, the audio from the children's questions, with the responses from the expert. And then this is Catherine, as I mentioned, she produces Cranio, and then this is Herwin with Camaleon, and these are our incredible co-hosts for Camaleon, Hema and Isabella. But other elements that we'll build into the podcasts are science activities that families can be doing, conversation starters, mystery sounds, trivia, things that keep, as you can imagine, designing to keep a 6-year-old paying attention to solar eruptions is not always the easiest thing in the world to do. Questions about the way that we produce this? This is kind of the manufacturing like back end of it, but it's how we approach it.
I have a question actually.
Mhm.
Where do you how do you get in touch with the parents and kids to get the questions sent in for them for the episodes that you want to do?
Yeah, so I'm gonna stop sharing. I'll pop up one of the communities on my WhatsApp here. Um, Basically, we share an episode. When you listen to an episode, when a family does, they hear like children's voices. And a natural question that children will ask is, how do I do that basically? And so what we do is we'll put into the description in our show notes, and we actually put it on the screen for where we publish video, what our WhatsApp number is that we have for Cranio and for Camaleon. And then parents will write to us and say, I want to submit a question for an episode. And then we have them fill out basically information, a short form with information about their family, as well as a consent form with our privacy policy. And then we'll add them to we have a WhatsApp community with groups that they submit questions to. And then the way that tactically we do it is, a couple times a week, we're preparing for episodes several months in advance, and we'll send a message similar to this, which, says, this is for an upcoming episode about the mathematics of soccer. And so we say, parents, if your kid loves soccer, this is a great episode for them. In this episode, we're going to be exploring mathematics, statistics, and physics of soccer, or football for anybody that's not American. Sorry, guys. And then we give a couple prompts for topics that we can include or that we might discuss in the episode that we've aligned with the guest in advance. So, about the rotation and the physics of putting rotation on the soccer ball, how mathematics and statistics are used to develop strategy, how trainers use math and technology to improve their athlete performance. And then parents will respond to this with voice recordings, is basically how that kind of communication works. Does that make sense? Kelly, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great that you have all these different ways of communicating with your audiences. I guess, you have these communities, and I guess also through Spotify, you can do a similar thing. Um, but yeah, having multiple different modes, I suppose, is an important aspect of what you're doing.
Yeah, and in particular, like when we launch, I mean, WhatsApp is, as anybody here in Latin America is aware, is like the way that families are communicating, and with their schools, with their other family members. Just it's how a lot of business is done. And so being on that platform is the easiest way. Like a lot of our objective is how can we make it easy for families to consume our content, to use our content, to engage with our content. And in this case, to help us produce our content and to make it better. So um, as far as impact in our programs, we do around 230 to 250,000 downloads every month. And downloads in children's media or in children's podcasts, it's very, adults listen with headphones in to podcasts or alone in a vehicle. Children listen with siblings, they listen with parents, especially parents. And so each of those, we think about our impact in inspiration, also in bringing families together by creating media that parents and children can share together. So we get feedback from, these are all translated, but we get feedback from parents saying things not just like I like that my child is learning about science, but they do tell us that. But they also say things like, your programs inspire conversations between us. And it helps me to know who my daughter or my son are. We learn, we interact, we have fun. One of our podcasts has music. We get great feedback on how fun and like movement and dancing with it. Um, and multi-generation or like many different family sizes, shapes, compositions. In this case, a family in Colombia, two parents who, in response to a question, who listens, two parents, one child, one grandmother, and an aunt. And so in that case, we've designed something for the child, but it's brought both parents a grandparent and an aunt into engaging with science. And so it's, there's just something about the making fun media that a child loves that inspires adults as well to engage in new topics and new learning. I see that Catherine Aguilar just joined. Hi, Catherine. Welcome. Bienvenida. Catherine's my Catherine's my co-founder and the talented producer of Granio. So when we think about serving our audiences, when we designed our programs, um, these were the four things that we were trying to really try to give to parents. And it's based on like, what do parents want from media? They want to feel good about media that their children are being exposed to and influenced by. They want to feel closer to their children and they want to enjoy their time together, not suffer through programming that they don't enjoy or have a child that's not happy with it. They want to see their children growing and inspired and believe that their child has a better future as a result. And then also number four is very, very important for what we do, which is they need content to be dependable that can be built into routines. And that can be weekend routines. It can be morning drives. It can be before bed. Like there's, it's most helpful to listening parents in our point of view, to give a lot of content dependably that they can work with. And so our entire production process and design process is designed to accomplish these four things. And these are the principles essentially that our team designs with. The parent and the child, we're trying to accomplish this with all of our content. The parent and the child both love and enjoy the content. The child learns and is more curious as a result of the program. The program number three is, I think, incredibly important to me, just from a mission standpoint. The program creates unique interactions that bring the family together. And then it reflects healthy values, including curiosity, kindness, empathy, optimism, resourcefulness, care for the natural environment, things like that. Let me pause here. I think that's all I was going to cover regarding background for our programs. Do folks have thoughts or reactions? Even if it's not a question, I'd love to hear what's going or what people think or what's on y'all's minds.
Yeah, so I just love that you had created such a interactive platform with the parents. This is the first time that I heard about such an innovative model. I'll use that as an inspiration for our own podcasting. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah. And we do it in Spanish, and we're about to produce in English, but there's a ton of opportunity. I love to hear that y'all are thinking about getting into podcasting or that y'all are doing it. So there's a ton of space, and particularly in non-English languages, as English just happens to be, because of the way that podcasts were invented, the way that technology developed and around the world, and the way that Apple's strategy was different from Google's. Basically, like podcasting in English is several years ahead of the rest of the world, and there's a ton of opportunity if y'all are thinking about languages that are relevant to your communities.
I have another question, if I
Sure.
can. So you on the previous slide you had the four kind of
Yeah.
goals that you wanted for parents, four things that you wanted, that you think parents want. Did you do like a focus group with parents to kind of come to these four things, or how did you arrive at these criteria?
We didn't do focus groups. A lot of this was intuition, to be honest. Not just my intuition from Catherine, from Herwin, who were designing alongside me, and then also looking at what already existed in English. We launched 2 years ago. Podcasting, we're among the earliest in educational podcasting in Spanish, but in English had developed a few years. And so we studied, I don't know, 10 probably kids podcasts to understand what they were doing, what design elements they were incorporating, what's the potential, because you can implicitly understand the audience by looking at what the audience is consuming. You kind of back into that understanding, more of a revealed preference than like asking questions about it. And some of these we've refined over time, but this was our shot. This was our hypothesis. It was like, if we can accomplish these things, we think parents will go out of their way to listen to us, and that ended up being accurate.
Cool.
I hope that maybe not as sufficient or
No,
satisfying.
That's
But-
great. That's perfect. Thank you. I think Anna has her hand up.
Oh, yes, thank you, Rob. I'm really wondering how did you start all this? Because I mean, those are very large numbers, and that's a lot of effort. All the episodes you have, and they're amazing. You said that you started just by studying other podcasts, but how long it took, how much effort, how much time until you said, okay, we did it good, we're just gonna keep this line on?
Yeah. So our team has produced podcasts together for quite a while. As I mentioned, Herwin, Riera, and I met in 2018, and we started producing then, and Catherine joined our team a few years later. Catherine and Herwin are both Venezuelan immigrants displaced by the crisis in Venezuela, and so we produced podcasts for adults for 4 or 5 years, basically. There were essentially audio documentaries. So we had a long history of producing audio together while I was working in the United States, on like doing different work. And then yeah, when we were ready for a new creative endeavor back in 2022, we started a small company thinking we were actually going to produce branded programs for businesses, which is something that happens more in English than in Spanish. But while we were trying to build a successful business, which we in that regard, which we totally failed at, we came across the children's space, and we were studying different areas, like what do podcasts look like in food and children and health and branded, and when we looked at children in particular, we saw a huge gap. Like, just nobody was doing educational programs. There were bedtime podcasts, and there were like some English podcasts that were basically being translated into Spanish, but there was nobody that was just totally dedicated to Spanish-speaking families. And so for us, it was kind of a no-brainer to go like that. There's 600 million Spanish speakers in the world. Podcasts were going like crazy. This was obviously a media that works culturally, but anybody under the age of 12 had nothing that they could like reliably turn to. And so we wanted to help develop that. I still work 2 jobs. Is the other part, like, how long did it take? It's still taking, basically. Like, we are still our audience has grown. Monetizing children's content is complicated. Brands aren't sure what to do with you, and the public support for children's content, like foundations, don't really know what to do with you a lot of the time. It's kind of a hard space that we've chosen, but that in one sense that is also our opportunity, because very few others are trying as hard as we are to make this work. And so we're 2 years in now. I'll go over in a little bit some data regarding when we experienced growth and what that growth looked like and where it came from. But maybe one last comment. In the first 4 months, we weren't sure. We launched Cranio and one other podcast, but we weren't sure if there was an audience. We thought there should be, but we weren't positive. But what we were seeing was, from the first couple months, parents were starting to send us feedback like, we love your programs. And we started seeing, my children look forward to your programs. My children talk about Catherine as if they know her. And we were hearing that. And then on the data side, you can see like episode completion rates, and we were far outperforming industry. And so even though our audience was very small, we thought, if we have this high quality engagement that we're seeing from families, then it will come. Like, keep giving great content, and parents will find us, and that's essentially what's happened. Does that answer your question, Dr. Torres?
Yeah, thanks very much.
Great. Manuel?
Thanks. Thanks. First of all, congratulations. As the meeting began, I go to Spotify and check out some of your content and things you have there. It's an impressive job. It's an impressive job. I mean, wow. And also the way that you have talked that is received by the parents, because this is a not so easy topic for parents, because sometimes they don't understand why their kids should learn the things to have a better future, because in their mindset that they have to do is study, go to a college, go to an office, and blah blah blah. But engineering through STEAM science is the 21st century year's best suggestion to make. And I want, this is the intention of my question now. Where your source of knowledge to put in the content of the talks come from, and how many people are collaborating with you in the team? Thanks.
So we largely, the content itself comes from our expert guests. And so like, if we think back to like this process, we collect the questions. We do not become subject matter experts. That would, for the frequency and the volume of content that we want to produce, we can't. Like, essentially, like, that would slow our process so much. And so we bring those questions to our guests, and we ensure that our guests have backgrounds in the sciences, that they've studied it. They're coming from great scientific institutions. Many of them are professional science communicators. And so that's where, we bring it. Our hypothesis is, if we bring in fantastic guests who have scientific background, like, that's the vetting. That's a sufficient level of vetting for what we need for our audiences. Obviously, that's not what you would do if you were running a peer-reviewed, like, a journal on original research, but for producing content appropriate for 8-year-olds, that kind of works for us. And it's what the guest wants to do. They want to communicate, and we focus on, how do we make it engaging? How do we help them be a fantastic guest that holds parents and children's attention?
Thank you.
And we'll get into, like, who our collaborators are. Getting back to one of Dr. Torres's questions around, like, how did we grow? Like, where did that come from? Just you might see where this one's going, but like, when people say audience development, I think that's a very poorly understood term. So my question is, like, here's some examples of what audience development could be. The question here is, like, which of these are actually audience development? If you'd have thoughts.
Some of this, I don't even know what they are. So what is, like, SEO?
Oh, search engine optimization. Just, like, making sure that there's about to be AIO or something like that, artificial intelligence optimization. We had our first parent write to us recently saying that they found our podcast after asking ChatGPT about children's podcasts. So that is starting to happen quickly. But yeah. But
I would say that the organic mention by oh wait.
Exchange of recommendations with other podcasters.
Oh no, the shout outs of parents, I would say.
those are both correct. It turns out all of these, every single one of these, is audience development. It's just like, there's no secret formula. You have to build it into the way that you work. The ones in blue here are things that we have done in the last probably month. We are constantly experimenting with different things, trying to reach new audiences. Not all of these work at the same level of like efficacy, the second to last one, leaving business cards at Mexican restaurants in Texas is what my parents do in Bryan, Texas. So we've got like anybody who goes to Jose's Mexican restaurant in Bryan, Texas will see like a little Cranio business card. But like it's the audience development just means like being in front of parents in our case, or listeners or audiences in a moment that they are open to your messaging. And so we work really, really hard on this. Audiences don't come to you. They don't, very rarely do they just discover you because you do great content. You know, you have to work really, really hard, just as hard, if not harder, on developing audiences as you worked on, you know, creating great content for those audiences. Apple promotions is a little bit of a black box. I haven't done that one yet. I might go back to that one. We've done that one in the past. So then what does audience development look like in real life? This is what I would have thought, you know, maybe it's linear growth, maybe hopefully it's like accelerating growth over time. That cut to the chase, that is not what it looks like. This is what audience development has looked like for us, which is like, here's the, you know, 4 months of, I think we have something, I'm not really sure, we're not really growing fast. We're probably adding 20 listening families a week, 20 to 30, something like that. And then you can see like very explicitly where Instagram and TikTok mom influencers essentially took a liking to our programs and they exploded. And that's these moments, we didn't plan any of these. These were all like, we woke up one day and we had a couple thousand new families that were all of a sudden following our programs. But you earn these moments by producing great content in these periods, because that's the only reason why you get, you know, high quality organic growth, like what we've benefited from. Questions here about audience development or thoughts? No. It's hard. Like it's hard, confusing, frustrating, like exciting, keeping emotionally stable with yeah, in this world and trying to yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question, please.
Sure.
I just wanted to know how you deal with, I don't know, especially if you are present also on social media, with the changes happening with these platforms. I mean, the algorithms and how the network is growing. Like sometimes they give preference to shares, and sometimes, I mean, it changes a lot. And it requires or it pushes the person to be present. For example, if you're absent for a month from like your account or being present, I don't know, the engagement will drop exponentially. So it's really frustrating. So how can you deal in this kind of situations? Or, I mean, do you have specialists maybe related to social media to maintain like the same engagement?
That's one fantastic question. I am both our social media manager and pretty bad at social media. Like if we are not as an organization, I am not personally like a social media influencer. Like we have a growing audience there. We do some paid ads to grow. But we think about social media as the medium we need to be in order to get people onto podcasting platforms. And so it's from the parents are on Instagram. We want to bring parent from Instagram to Spotify or from Instagram to YouTube or to Apple Podcasts. And we don't ever try to go in the other direction. It's all one direction that we're trying to move parents. However, many of our guests are great at social media. We work, like some of the best science communicators in the world today are Instagram and TikTok influencers. And you know, they're doing incredibly creative things with their approaches. We work on basically producing to a level of quality that our guests will share on their platforms and that have a chance of resonating with parents that follow our guests. And so we do a lot of collaborations there. But that's mostly, it's not with the goal of getting science engagement on the platform. It's with the goal of communicating or demonstrating that, you know, great zoos, great museums, great organizations are participating in a children's podcast so that their parents know how to find us, is essentially our approach. You're totally right that social media, the platforms change very fast. There are thousands and thousands of people who are really working hard to build social media followings. We try to work with them, but we don't try to compete with them for attention. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wonderful. One of Manuel's questions was about relationships with leading institutions and how we work with them. We work with lots of folks. Basically, any organization that is interested in communicating with, reaching, educating, you know, children in Spanish about STEM or about health or about conservation, we work with. That's museums, zoos, children's hospitals, federal agencies. And we do it with organizations across the United States, Latin America, and Spain. A few other places as well, actually. We had a guest from New Zealand, we had a guest from Norway. But these are, I would say, like we produce approximately half with US-based organizations and about half with rest of world. That's in part because a lot of the science funding in the world is in the United States. It's in part because I'm American and it's a little bit easier for me to navigate, you know, the context in the United States. But we work very hard to get international representation on our programs. I think we've had guests from 15 countries at this point. But these are all organizations with unique objectives that they're trying to achieve. And so our goal, or like what we have to do, is make it easy for them to participate with us, and to align what we're trying to do with what their educational and science communication goals and PR goals are. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So question, why would insert huge, well-funded, 100-year-old institution produce alongside small, independent, unknown podcast, often produced in a second language that the PR professional does not speak? At this, like today, we have you know, large audience numbers, or like, you know, substantive audience numbers, and so it's easier. But starting out, we had to get people to produce with us when we had 0 followers, like even before we started producing podcasts. And so, you know, there's a couple things that this is mostly my job, like finding, recruiting, and developing relationships with organizations. You know, the thing that helps us is most organizations, museums, zoos, like, want to help children. Like, that is a very common objective. They want to communicate with children. They want to feel good about the connection and that their work is making a difference. And they are inclusive by nature. Many of these, almost all of the organizations that exist today, or that, you know, that we've worked with. And the PR teams, what they're trying to achieve, here's just a couple: spotlight new voices from within their organization. When we work in the United States, frequently it's like, great, we have bilingual educator, we have bilingual scientists. We don't have the chance to showcase them and their you know, position their ability to speak in Spanish as the asset that it is. And so they're excited about working with us. They're trying to reach new families. They're trying, you know, they feel underappreciated or misunderstood frequently in what their mission is. And so we have to, like, design things that we want to help our families understand the roles that these organizations are playing in their communities, and that they're ready to play as they're raising children. And importantly, they can't, the request can't be include a lot of time or effort. These are busy people with a bunch of things going on, and it can't have reputational risk for their organization, because no single media engagement is worth that. And so with that context, all of my communication is targeted at how can I make it a no-brainer, like as easy as possible for them to say yes to what we do, or to participating with us and eventually sharing our content. These are all ways that I reach guests, cold emails. Personally, sometimes I'll reach out to individual researchers after I read about something they've published or a talk they've given. I think the way I got connected with IAU was cold email after like looking for leading global astronomy organizations. I just found, I don't know if it was Cynthia's email or Rom's or somebody's like that. LinkedIn, I do like LinkedIn, trying to connect with people. I do a lot of Instagram direct messages to organizations that are communicating about science. And warm introductions is frequently, not always, a helpful way for an intro. And it takes time. Like some of the leading organizations are inundated. Like they just get media requests from everywhere. Everybody's trying to tap into their brand value. They're trying to get their audience. That's the environment that the PR professional is operating in. And so what I have to be is like patient, try different creative ways. The thing at the bottom has been a lesson that I've had to learn and relearn. Organizations don't respond to us. Individual human beings respond to us. And so it's never the case that the Smithsonian doesn't want to produce with us. It's the case that I haven't reached the right person in the Smithsonian who understands what we're doing, or I haven't communicated with that person using words that they connect with and that they feel good about. And so some of our guests, I had to work more than a year to get to return my emails or get on the phone or something like that, because my goal is get the best organizations that want to be communicating with our families, give them the opportunity to do that, and help our families learn from the best scientists and science communicators in the world. Here's very tactically what an outreach email from me looks like. If you want to take a screen grab or anything, like feel free. This is just open. But the subject line, I try to make it extremely clear. This is for communicating with a media team. It's like, I want an interview. What is it for? It's for a pre-K through 5 STEM podcast, because nobody knows what Cumbre Kids is, with your museum, so that they know it's like tailored, directed at them, not like a blast email to a bunch of people. I give a little bit of background on me. I give information very direct about our podcast reach, and at this point, and a few peer organizations we've featured. But something funny is, as soon as we started telling people we produced with NASA, we got many fewer questions about if we were legit. What I didn't tell them was we produced with NASA because there's a PhD chemist at NASA who I ran cross country with in high school, who was a Spanish speaker, and he was featured on like our 5th program. But then after that, we earned the right we've produced with NASA, I think 4 or 5 times. And so, but basically early on, it was who can we get for this? But I'm very clear about, this is the process, this is the request of you, that we do not charge our guests to be featured, which is, these are just like basically running through the questions that I know that they are going to have before they respond to me. And then I give everybody a deadline, which just helps move it to the priority list if it is something that they're interested in. Question, like reactions here. I don't know if this is helpful or not, but this is how we approach it, or how I approach it.
It is very helpful, I think. Yeah, Kema has another question in the chat. She's asking if all of your content is using Spanish language, or if you have anything in English.
We've produced in English before. We're about to launch an English language podcast. We haven't done that. Like, Spanish is still our #1 priority, especially in the current environment in the United States. It's increasingly important when working with public institutions that we be able to communicate with the entire US population, or, the broadest segment of the US population as possible, which is English. And so what we're, that's if we want to produce series with, some of the leading organizations. It's easier, it's less risky for them to produce in English and Spanish, even if 90x% of our audience is Spanish speaking. it's important that the content be accessible in English and also for integration into American classrooms and things like that. And so we're moving in a direction that is more bilingual. However, our core and our most talented producers like Catherine and Herman they're Spanish speakers. I will be the host of our English content, and they are much better at what they do than I am at what I do. And so yeah, we're moving in. I would love to do French. I would love to do Portuguese. I'd love to do, non-Western languages. Hopefully, I don't speak any of those languages, but hopefully some of the folks here might take an interest in doing that. Sure. Shafayette, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, sure. Some of these tips are really helpful, but I just have a question. Your podcast is a leading podcast now, right? You have lots of exposure. So, not trying to convince of your impact is easy for you now. But when you were starting, I mean, what was your approach back then? Because our podcast team is also in Bangladesh, is also like starting up. We're trying to reach the experts. So, I'm just looking forward to your comments. Thank you.
Yeah. Boy, it's kind of like from our perspective, it was whatever it takes. As I mentioned, where I had personal connections, I reached out to try to get friends or people that were involved that I already knew involved. I probably cold emailed 50 organizations trying to get our first 10 guests lined up. What actually ended up happening was a museum in Bogota, Colombia responded to me and I think actually misunderstood what we were doing, but said they would produce with us. And I could then start going to other museums and say, like, we're producing with a leading museum in Colombia. And as soon as I started saying things like that, PR teams started taking me more seriously. And so I think that like social, not validation, reinforcement, something. My experience with guests is you can significantly lower the risk by saying that other people in their position or similar institution with similar concerns are already working with you. And so as soon as we got a couple of those, we quickly moved past the problem of getting somebody to participate. For us, like producing with Smithsonian or with the National Park Service or Fundación Tamaican in Argentina or some of these leading organizations, we needed a big audience, basically. Like we couldn't produce with the largest, most prestigious names from the start. But that's not where all of the most influential people are, who are frequently like doing innovative things in science communication on social media today. Or not like that we could find fantastic science communicators from small organizations or unknown organizations. And so yeah, it takes time and effort and thick skin because we got a lot of rejection. Oh, I can't tell you the number of times that I've been ghosted by organizations or people. Sorry, I'm long-winded, but this is again tactically like how this is an example of outreach on Instagram. Now Instagram is different because they can visit our profile, so I don't have to provide a lot of the context up front. I can just say like basically my message today is as simple as, hey, I really like your content. Would your zoo or your museum be interested in participating on X podcast? I don't tell them anything else. Like the goal is like get a response. And I found that if I put a lot of information up front, I don't get responses. And so it's basically like yes or no. Is this interesting to you? And frequently the answer is yes. I wanted to include this one in part because like this is a simple sequence for getting engagement, but also I am constantly reminding our potential collaborators like, hey, we discussed this. Is this still of interest? I haven't heard from you in a little while. Is that because you don't have capacity? And they've a lot's going on. Maybe something happened in their world that I'm not aware of, or at their zoo, or they had an event, or maybe they just forgot or something like that, and like they just need a little nudge. And if they're enthusiastic, eventually they'll respond. So and just on the topic of goals, I try to be aware of like what are the goals that they might be trying to achieve. Increasing visits is a really important one if you're trying to work with museums. Diversifying and expanding their audience, achieving diversity goals is still, you know, even if that's not necessarily a public goal in the United States, like diversifying audiences is a goal. And many of these private and nonprofit organizations, we help organizations that are trying to win federal grants, you know, demonstrating impact, generating free PR. Like these, I really try to think or try to communicate in a way that resonates with something that a PR team is likely to be trying to achieve. And that's how we get responses. Golly, coming up on time, and I apologize. Our audiences basically reflect Spanish speaking, like the global distribution of Spanish speakers. Like if you look here, this is our Spotify. Venezuela is the only one that does not appear on the top 9 or 10, and that's because Spotify is blocked in Venezuela. But everywhere else, it's almost 1-to-1, and so we're reaching them. A couple ways we do this is by designing with the unique perspectives that each of our team members brings. Like our team lives in Colombia, I live in Mexico, we have artists in Mexico. I bring an American perspective as well. And so we use something called design thinking when we're designing our media products. And the design is important for designing something inclusive. Also, how do we resonate with families? You know, my view is that families across cultures have more in common than they have different. You know, they want the best thing for their kids. They're curious. They appreciate quality content. They like variety. These are things we can design for that don't matter what your nationality or you know, many other demographic characteristics are. And then we look to our guests who are from Spain or from Argentina or from various parts of the United States or from Mexico or from Colombia, to help individually, you know, give the chance for children in different parts of the world to identify with the content. But the most important part is that we design for the parent and the child, and the parent can make science relevant in the child's life. And so as long, like we're not trying to do the job of the parent, we're trying to give parents the opportunity to be inspired together with their children. And if we do that, then the parent will contextualize the science with their child, because they're spending, you know, dozens of hours longer with their child than we have the opportunity to. We just want to help them have a better science experience together as a family. Science communication in 2025. I'll go through this very, very briefly, but my perspective on this, given what's going on at NSF, at NIH, you know, in public discourse, we're in like science communication and in a U.S. context specifically, which is a limited context. 90% of our audience is outside of the United States, and so I try not to obsess about what's going on in the U.S. There's funding there that's important for science and science communication, so we need to pay attention to it. However, it's not the majority of our audience. It's not what we need to be politically obsessed with. But every institution in the United States is on a different journey, and it's impossible to know how they're doing it. Some of them are saying, like, I understand this is what's going on in the government. Hispanic audiences are very important to us. We want to produce with you in Spanish. You're a priority. Others are saying, like, this is really hard given the pressure that we're under. I respect both of those. Like, these are organizations that have a really, really hard job today. And, you know, we've had guests. We had a guest yesterday that pulled out because of, you know, political uncertainty. We let that happen. We'll be here whenever they're ready to engage again. But there's also unique goals today that organizations are like there's less focus on diversity. There's more focus on career preparedness, on like certain like messaging. Universities are really focused on communicating with the public. Researchers feel a renewed sense of urgency around communicating science and the importance and relevance of their science with the public. So not all of these are like probably what we would sit down and write as aspirational. However, there's ways to work with them. And so, we don't get to dictate the environment, but we do get to react to it and accommodate it to the extent we can. So I'm not saying that's the right approach. That's just my approach, and my philosophy on that. But I know we're at time, so I think Cynthia and Kelly might be here to remind me that. So I don't need to drop. If folks want to stick around and chat, I'd be delighted to.
No, actually, I was just gonna comment that you mentioned the guest that not always going to be able to participate, and that's okay. And it just reminded me that these days we're trying to have institutions or groups participating in our next event, which is 100 Hours of Astronomy in October. And I was very sad because the Planetarium of Medellin declined our invitation because they already have another event. And I was telling Kelly that day when I received the email saying that they are not going to participate, saying like, oh, I want to cancel everything. Like, I don't want to do anything without them. So it's like, I mean, yes, sometimes it's going to happen like that. And it is normal, and not always institutions are going to be able to participate, and that's normal, and we need to continue even if we want so badly to participate with that planetarium, but it's okay. Someday I will have them. But yes, I don't know if we are moving into the end, but I think it's important to know if anyone else has another comment. I don't know, Kelly or Naomi, of course, too, would like to address anything else.
I actually
Can I
do.
ask a question?
Oh yeah, no, Shema, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, maybe I've left my question till the end. So maybe it's a bunch of many questions, but I know it's really stupid to ask this kind of questions when we have such a project like with this impact. But I'm all the time asking about money and really how to get funds. For example, when you started, you were completely volunteering. I mean, or
Sorry,
if
I'm
you
gonna
had already
interrupt you a
funds.
little bit. We're not really hearing you well. I don't know if it's your microphone.
Oh, okay.
We hear a lot of
And
echo.
now
Yeah, it's better. Yes. Yes.
maybe it's better like this.
Yes,
Okay,
it's
I'm
better.
very
Thank you.
sorry. Okay, so I just wanted to ask about, I mean, money, because here in Algeria, well, I guess it's the same in many other places. I wanted to start I'm already working with kids in private schools, like doing STEM workshops, and I wanted like to expand this into podcasts or something like videos on YouTube to make it accessible for people who can't like go to private schools and pay for this kind of workshops. But at the same time, like I need to get money and to work for myself. So it's really hard now to work as a volunteer and to start this kind of projects. Also, when you started like the whole project, I've seen a bit in your YouTube channel. It's amazing, like with the designs and colors. And I'm sure that people working on this, they should get paid at least for their work. Or I don't know how you work in generally or how you started. So, and my last question is the institutions. I know you said one of the points that when you collaborate with institutions abroad, you mentioned, for example, diversity. If I want to start, for example, a project here in Algeria or for the Arab world, I'm sure I'm gonna use either my like Algerian language or Arabic for more like impact or to touch many other countries who speak Arabic. But I'm not sure if these kind of institutions like would like get something beneficial from our collaborations or to get funds from them. Adding to that, that in Algeria we don't have this kind of like scientific institutions or research. We have two of them working with universities, and not necessarily like they want to target kids or this like this category of society. So I don't know if you can help to clarify all these points. Thank you so much.
Yeah, funding is very hard. So we get about 25% of our costs are covered by listening parents who contribute to our Patreon. For most of them between $3 and $10 a month. Yeah, US dollars. The other part I've just paid for. Like it's yeah, you're right. We pay our team. and we pay them at a level that allows them to do high quality work and live that meets their needs. Our team is not getting rich off of this, and I know that like I work 2 jobs, and so I basically am. The way that we're monetizing today is I have enough free time to earn money in a different job that I then invest in Cumbre Kids. Now that we have an audience, there's more interesting opportunities. As some of our collaborators, like we're applying for grants, we're having opportunities to do more PR for there's one university that like one of their goals is STEM communication with children in our age group, and so we're potentially going to be doing an episode series with them. So there's ways to monetize, but it's very difficult, and getting organizations to contribute that upfront is hard. In our case, like yeah, I hate to say it this way, we had a benefactor who was me, who believed in this enough to like put in a couple of years of work and invest in it financially. And so it didn't have to be me. It could also be somebody else that believes in this as a mission. Universities, there's funding vehicles that exist out there. In our case, like applying for grants that have an educational element to them, even if they're a research grant. But yeah, it is. I wish I had an easy answer to this one. It's a real challenge, and it's why nobody was doing this in Spanish before us. And Spanish is the probably 3rd or 4th largest, most spoken, 4th, 5th language in the world. Like it's there's a lot of benefits that we have in Spanish that, as you mentioned, other either languages spoken by smaller populations or by parts of the world that have less scientific infrastructure don't benefit from. And so not I would love to chat with you about that, but I don't I wish I had a silver bullet, but even we're not profitable today. And so we're continuing to run on, we believe with an audience we can make this more financially sustainable, but we're not there yet.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I wish I had a better answer for that than I do. Maybe someday we can. I do think podcasting in particular is going through a moment right now where there is increasing appreciation. There's increasing research into the value of podcasting. Brands are becoming more aware of it. Children's podcasting is behind adult podcasting, but media in general and high quality media is getting attention, and so I do think there will be more focus there. But in our case, we had to build the audience with the expectation that would happen, not because somebody else believed in it.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Maybe real quick, I would love y'all's help as how we can work together. If you work with Spanish-speaking communities or just like follow us, we'll be in as I mentioned in English soon. Dr. Torres's episode will be out here in a couple weeks, I think, about galaxies, so we can learn with Dr. Torres. If you have connections, I'd love to. It's hard to work into like federal agencies, especially for me outside of the United States. Like in Colombia, we're doing some work with CONICET down in Argentina, but the equivalents in Mexico and Uruguay and Peru and Chile, like if you've got connections with folks that would be interested, or in Spain, we would love, if there's folks here that listen to this and they're interested and they want to collaborate on content, Cynthia, Kelly, I'd love to, we should talk about 2026 and how we want to work together. I'd love to keep this relationship with IAU. And then if there's grant opportunities where we can work together to strengthen and bring what we don't do in person, like there's things in STEM inspiration and STEM engagement that we don't do. We're very bad at. We have 4 people. We're very bad at in-person events, which are equally important for for children and families. And there's many other things that we're not very good at. And so if there's a way that we can add our media, which we're good at, our distribution, to things that y'all are focused on, we'd be delighted to. But here's my email address. Yeah, feel free to drop me a note. And I'm sorry, Cynthia, for running over, and Kelly.